My ex-wife left my son at the park with nothing but a backpack and a note. I found them on a Tuesday around 4 in the afternoon, sitting on a bench near the swings. Marcus was 11, already trying not to cry. His little brother Tyler had his head down, swinging his legs. There was a suitcase next to them. One suitcase for 2 kids. I didn't ask questions. I just sat down and said, "Get in the car." Marcus looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. He thought I'd be angry. Instead, I was already doing the math in my head. Her new boyfriend, her fresh start, the usual story. But here's what she didn't account for. I had custody on weekends. That note she left was a violation. A clear one. When I pulled into my driveway, my father-in-law was waiting by the mailbox. He'd been at the house that morning. I remembered seeing his truck. He walked over real slow, that look on his face like I'd just committed a crime by existing. "Your blood isn't worthy of this family," he said, flat and quiet. I smiled. Actually smiled. "We'll see about that." My father-in-law, Robert, had always been the invisible hand in our marriage. Not aggressive, worse. Quiet. The kind of man who'd do you a favor then remind you of it for years. He owned a construction company, had money, and his daughter inherited his talent for making people feel small without raising his voice. The boys stayed with me that week. I took them to school, made their lunches, sat with Tyler while he did homework at the kitchen table. That's when I noticed something. Marcus had a bruise on his ribs. He wouldn't say how he got it. Tyler mentioned his mom's boyfriend had gotten angry last month. Nothing criminal sounding, but enough to make my stomach tight. My sister, Jennifer, came by on Thursday with groceries. She'd never liked my ex-wife, but she loved those boys like they were hers. When she saw them, she just hugged them for a long time without talking. After the kids went to bed, she sat with me in the kitchen and said, "You need to document everything. Every mark, every story they tell you. Robert's already telling people you kidnapped them." I hadn't even thought that far ahead yet. "What's he saying exactly?" I asked. "That you stole them to get back at his daughter." The first lawyer consultation cost me $800. The guy was straightforward. I had legal custody on weekends, but abandonment was a gray area. What mattered was proof. Medical records. School records. Statements from the kids. A pattern. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus started talking more. Not all at once. Little pieces. His mom's boyfriend, Derek, had moved in fast. 3 months of dating before he was living in their apartment. Then the discipline started. Nothing that left permanent marks, mostly. But Marcus was 12 now, old enough to understand humiliation. Derek would yell about small things. A dish in the sink, shoes by the door. Marcus learned to be invisible. Tyler just wanted to be hugged. Robert called me on a Wednesday. His voice was smooth, almost concerned. "The boys need stability," he said. "Derek made a mistake, but he's working with a therapist now. Sarah wants them back. You're making this harder than it needs to be." I didn't argue. I just said, "They're safe here." But I was watching now. I took photos of the bruises that were still visible. I got the school to send me their attendance records. They'd missed 14 days and 3 months before the abandonment. I called a child psychologist and booked an appointment without telling anyone. The pieces were starting to fit. The psychologist's report came back in a sealed envelope. I sat in my car in the parking lot and read it twice. Dr. Patterson used careful language, but the meaning was clear. Both boys showed signs of emotional neglect and exposure to an unstable environment. Tyler had anxiety responses to loud voices. Marcus displayed hypervigilance, always watching, always ready to disappear. That's when I made the call to my lawyer. "We have grounds," he said. "Not just for expanded custody. For a full evaluation of her fitness as a primary caregiver. The boyfriend is a problem, but the pattern, the missed school, the instability, the abandonment, that's what matters." Robert had underestimated me. He thought I was the guy he'd always looked down on, the one without his money, his connections, his quiet authority. He thought I'd fold under pressure because I always had before. But those boys weren't a game. They weren't leverage. They were mine, and I'd been quiet about what I was doing because I'd learned it from him. The day before the custody hearing was scheduled, my ex-wife called me crying. She wanted to negotiate. Robert had told her to call, probably. She was panicked now, she understood what was coming. The lawyer had sent the psych report to her attorney, and she knew it was over. "What do you want?" she asked. I told her exactly what I wanted. I didn't want revenge. I wanted structure. I wanted the boys safe, and I wanted everyone to understand the cost of their choices. The deal was simple: full custody, no negotiation. She could have supervised visitation, 2 hours on Saturday afternoons at my house with my sister present. Derek was done. If he ever came near the boys again, I'd press charges. She'd fight the CPS evaluation, but only if she agreed to therapy herself and admitted in writing that the living situation had been unsafe. She agreed to everything. For 2 weeks I did nothing but wait. I prepared the house, got the boys their own bedrooms, set up a schedule, nothing rigid but enough structure so they'd know what to expect. I took Tyler to his first therapy appointment without making it weird. Just, we're going to talk to someone who helps kids feel better, and that was it. Marcus was harder. He was angry now that he felt safe, angry at his mom, at Derek, at the situation. I let him be angry. I didn't try to fix it or convince him to forgive anyone. I just said, your feelings are real. You're allowed to have them. At night, I'd sit in the dark kitchen with a cup of coffee and think about Robert. He hadn't called since the lawyer's letter went out. That silence meant he was calculating, figuring out his next move. I was ready for it. You said, next. Robert showed up at my house on a Saturday morning. He didn't call ahead. Just knocked on the door around 9, dressed in a polo shirt and khakis like he was going to brunch. The boys were still asleep. We need to talk, he said. I let him in but didn't offer coffee. We sat in the living room and he started with disappointment. His favorite weapon. You're destroying your ex-wife. You're making this impossible for everyone. I didn't respond. Sarah's in therapy now because of you. The boys are confused. You're using them to punish her. He paused, waiting for me to defend myself. I didn't. I want to help you. Let's find a middle ground. Maybe she gets them 3 days a week. Derek takes some anger management classes and we move forward. No, I said. You're being unreasonable. I'm being a parent. He leaned back and something shifted in his face. The disappointment turned into something colder. You know what your problem is? You've never understood your place in this family. You married into us. That means something. That means you follow the rules we set. I actually laughed. Not mean, just genuine disbelief at how he still thought this worked. My place, I said, is protecting my kids. That's the only rule I follow now. He left without saying goodbye. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in March. My lawyer had prepared everything. The psych reports, the school records, the documentation of the bruises. Simple facts, no emotion attached. My ex-wife showed up with her own lawyer. She looked exhausted, smaller than I remembered. Robert sat in the back row. He didn't look at me. The judge reviewed the evidence for maybe 20 minutes. She asked me one question. Why do you believe the children are safer with you? I told her the truth. No anger, no performance. Because I'm present. Because I've documented what happened. Because I've put their needs before everything else. The judge looked at my ex-wife. Miss Patterson, do you dispute any of this evidence? She didn't. She just shook her head. Full custody was granted. Supervised visitation stayed in place. Derek was ordered to complete a domestic behavior program before he could be in contact with the children. Walking out of the courthouse, I texted my sister, "It's done." Robert was standing by his truck in the parking lot. He saw me coming and waited. For a second I thought he'd say something, an apology, a grudging acknowledgement. Instead he just got in his truck and drove away. That was almost worse than anything he could have said. It meant he understood exactly what had happened. He'd been outmaneuvered by the guy he'd always underestimated. 3 months later, life was quieter than I expected. The boys had settled into a rhythm: school, homework, dinner together, bedtime stories for Tyler. Marcus was still angry sometimes, but it was different now. Cleaner. He knew he was safe, and that changed everything. My ex-wife came by for her supervised visits. She was actually trying. She'd stayed in therapy. Derek was gone from her life. She and I didn't talk much beyond logistics, but there was less poison in the air. She'd lost custody because she'd chosen wrong, and now she was living with that. That was enough. Robert never apologized. He sent birthday cards to the boys with checks inside, but he didn't visit. My sister said he'd told people at his church that I'd turned the children against him. He was already rewriting the story in his head, which meant he'd never actually learned anything. Some people don't. What surprised me was how little satisfaction I felt. I'd won. I'd protected the kids, exposed the truth, and come out on top. But there was no victory lap feeling. Just the steady, unglamorous work of being a parent. Packing lunches, helping with math homework, listening to Tyler talk about his day. That was the real power, I realized. Not outsmarting Robert. Not winning in court. It was having my kids know without question that I'd choose them every single time. That I'd never leave them on a bench with a suitcase and a note. Everything else was just noise.